So right off the bat, open your Bibles. Let's look at God's Word. Colossians chapter 1. Colossians chapter 1. As a staff here at Trinity, we've actually been engaged in this particular text most of the week. And Pastor Lee was looking at one aspect of the text, and I've been looking at it from a different vantage point. I wanted to share with you today kind of that vantage point that goes along with, I guess, life unplugged and slowing down and part of my sabbatical experience. So Colossians chapter 1, I'm going to read beginning with verse 3. I'm going to go through verse 14. But I want emphasis as we walk through this for you to key in on verses 9 and 10, okay? So Paul writes, and he writes to the church at Colossae, and he says, "We always thank God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, when we pray for you, since we heard of your faith in Christ Jesus and of the love that you have for all the saints, because of the hope laid up for you in heaven. Of this you have heard before in the word of the truth of gospel, which has come to you, as indeed in the whole world it is bearing fruit and increasing, as it also does among you since the day you heard it and understood the grace of God in truth, just as you heard it from Epaphras, our beloved fellow servant. He is a faithful minister of Christ and on your behalf, and has made known to us your love in the Spirit." And now kind of emphasizing these next couple of verses. "And so from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins." And so Paul here, as he opens up this letter to the church at Colossae, and if you read through the rest of the letter, the word that I use, it's a very creedal language. Paul writes to this young and kind of new church. It's got a lot of diversity within it. And as Paul usually does when he writes to these churches, it's a heavy teaching moment, right? But he begins this letter with this heavy emphasis on the foundation that is the gospel, right? The foundation of the gospel of being redeemed by the gracious sacrifice of Jesus. But in the midst of it, these two verses, and the reason why they kind of come out for me, and I'm going to share a couple of other quotes as well, but before I was going on sabbatical, I was working through this book by Henry Nguyen, pastor, spiritual writer, called Discernment. And so that was kind of my mindset was discernment. And right off the bat, this is the text that he's sharing. And the reason why it is again in verse 9, Paul is praying, but listen to what he's praying for, right? That you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And that is what discernment is all about. For us as followers of Jesus, there's plenty of moments where we need to be seeking the will of God in our lives, listening for the will of God in our lives, discerning the will of God in our lives, and praying for the will of God so that we may be filled with all knowledge, so that we walk in a manner that is worthy of the Lord. So this text was kind of foundational for me when I was going into my sabbatical. Let's talk about what that is. Defining what a sabbatical is. And I have a couple of key phrases on here. The purpose of a sabbatical is rest and renewal. And the second important thing is it's biblical. So as I was preparing I'll go back and say, I was beginning to write a proposal for me to go on a sabbatical. I started putting this together back in the fall of 2023. And so I was doing a lot of research at that time. I'd been heavily influenced at that time by a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And some of you are familiar with this because I did a lot of teaching on this back then as well. There was a podcast that went along with this that I was listening to, and he did a 2-part podcast on sabbatical, which was just so enlightening and so informative at that time. So I was influenced a bit by that, influenced by The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer. This is the book that will kind of guide the rest of the sessions going forward. You don't have to have the book. I'm going to be using kind of the book as a resource for our time together. But these were resources that were just kind of influencing me in regards to the need for a sabbatical and what a sabbatical was. I also was going to the Texas District website, the LCEF, Lutheran Church Extension Fund, who had a lot of resources on sabbatical. And so I'll read a portion of what I gained, especially from the LCEF's website. A ministry sabbatical is a period of time, usually 3 months, when ministry leaders and congregations set aside the leader's normal responsibilities for the purpose of rest and renewal towards sustained excellence in ministry. It is not an extended vacation, nor is it an academic sabbatical that involves extensive study. Rather, a ministry sabbatical is a release from the routine of the call for the physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual well-being of the church worker. And then it's biblical. It's biblical as well. In the biblical perspective on sabbaticals, the word sabbatical is drawn from the word Sabbath, which means rest, right? The Hebrew word for Sabbath is to close or rest, and it's connected with the last day of creation when God rested, Genesis chapter 2-3. God both models and commands Sabbath rest for his people. Fourth commandment, remember the third commandment, look at that. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy, from Exodus chapter 20. Jesus affirmed the importance of rest, saying the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. That comes from the Gospel of Mark chapter 2. And then the biblical example of Jesus' own frequent withdrawal to a quiet place to meditate, pray, be renewed, is a model for us as well. In his constant ministry, the constant demands of people led Jesus to step away regularly. Now, as you hear that, I also want you to hear the importance of not just a ministry leader. And this was one of the big takeaways for me in the podcast that from Emotionally Healthy Spirituality done on sabbatical was everyone. He was pointing to business leaders. Everyone needs a sabbatical. And so what does that look like for you? I don't know, but everyone needs one. So the next question is, why is a sabbatical important? Well, one, spiritual growth facilitated by periods of rest and renewal is vital toward being an effective minister. Number two, rapid changes in parish ministry can increase the likelihood of burnout without periods of rest and renewal. And so, again, burnout makes ministry and can make the minister dull, right? I know I've got some statistics as well here, right? So the rapid change and complexity of congregational life and ministry raises the need for a sabbatical, rest and renewal, every, get this, 4 to 7 years. Statistics reveal, and this is coming from the LCEF website, statistics reveal that 20 to 30% of ministry leaders are in a state of severe, not just burnout, but severe burnout, and another 20% of those are on their way toward severe burnout. And so motivations for considering a ministry sabbatical, I just pointed out, right? spiritual growth facilitated by rest and renewal. So why did I request a sabbatical? And when I put the whole sabbatical proposal together and submitted it to the board of directors, I went into a lot of detail, but the short answer is, at the time I was already 16 years into pastoral ministry, 16 years of nonstop pastoral ministry, 9 of it here at Trinity Klein. The other piece of it was not only that time of 16 years and 9 years here at Trinity, and if you come and talk to me and like really want to know part of my story, some of you have done that. No, I'm an open book. Like I will tell you anything and everything. I'm very vulnerable when it comes to my experiences. And so I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, right? 9 years of ministry, and a lot of you who have been a part of that 9 years of ministry know we went through a lot here at Trinity. We've been through a lot. When I came, I was part of, maybe this will be a little bit telling. When I arrived here, I was on the executive team, which consisted of the pastors, the executive director, the principal of the school. I'm the only one left. Think about that. I'm the only one left. The rest of them are all gone. And I had to live through a lot of that, and I had to take on a lot more responsibility through that. So I've been through a lot, a lot of good, but some of it really challenging and tough. We've all been through, the AOR. I will tell you that the senior pastor call process here was really challenging on me. The process itself, the outcome of it, was very, very hard, very, very hard for me. So at the same time, I had already submitted this sabbatical proposal before the senior pastor call. The committee had made their decision, but that weighed even more heavily as well in the process itself. So that was basically a small submission of why I had submitted for a sabbatical, but I also pointed out I was already influenced heavily by some of these other resources that just kind of said, it's time. Like I need a sabbatical. I was definitely in severe burnout. I can tell you by the time we got to around Easter, I was in that questioning, like, am I done here? Like, am I done? Should I be doing something else? That's where I was. So the sabbatical was very important. When I submitted for my sabbatical, I had a sabbatical plan for me that would basically tackle 4 specific areas. The primary focus was going to be restorative wellness. That was the exact words that I used. That came from some other pastors who had been through the sabbatical experience and also was helping me formulate what the sabbatical was all about. And that terminology just came up very strongly. Make sure that it's about restorative wellness. And in order to achieve restorative wellness, I plan to engage in 4 different activities. 1, spiritual restorative wellness. Following the lessons we've been teaching through emotionally healthy spirituality, ruthless elimination of hurry, these were my words as I submitted a plan. I plan to spend much of this time away focusing on my own relationship with God and seeking deeper spiritual formation for myself. I will have an intentional focus on silence and solitude, spiritual retreat, and personal devotion reading and journaling, and worship away from Trinity. Number 2, emotional restorative wellness. I had researched a 7-day intensive retreat center away, but the cost was just astronomically too high. So that wasn't able to make that happen. Instead, though, what I was blessed with is the Texas district, before the sabbatical experience even began, had already set me up with a pastoral counselor who I'd been meeting with weekly. And so I continued that through the sabbatical. So I met weekly with a pastoral counselor from the Texas district, and I kept working with him. The third piece was rest and renewal. Rest as I seek restorative wellness from emotional burnout and emotional trauma. And finally, the fourth was I did put in personal development, and actually this was a significant piece for me. I plan on spending this, again, this was pre-sabbatical language. I plan on spending some time growing my organizational development and leadership development skills through book reading and working through a couple of on-demand leader coaching and leadership courses. Continuing education to enhance my coaching skills through an 8-week course called Coaching Teams from Coach Approach Ministries, and 8 coaching sessions with Larry Reitz, who is, he works for the Texas district as well, and he is a personal coach, and that included working through my Harrison assessment. I went on to say, I firmly believe that this sabbatical will not only contribute to my personal, spiritual, emotional growth, but it will have positive implications for Trinity Klein as well. By taking this time away, I aim to return with fresh perspectives, renewed energy, and a deeper commitment to our shared ministry goals. So that was the sabbatical plan. And it was accepted, thankfully, by the board of directors, as you know. And I began my sabbatical in July. So I was given a 2-month sabbatical. Began that on July 1st, and I intentionally, completely unplugged from Trinity Klein Lutheran Church and School. I had Shelley Johnson, and we're discovering I'm still not back. I had intentionally had Shelley Johnson take me off of all distribution lists. So I had no connection to Trinity Klein. I had no idea what was happening here. It was very intentional for me to completely disconnect. And I'm laughing because we just found out this week that I'm still not on the elders distribution list. So I haven't been getting all those notes. So maybe I'm still on sabbatical from the elders. I don't know. So I began my sabbatical experience, again, July 1. And part of what I did, I'd kind of planned out what I wanted my weekly rhythm to look like. I actually planned a weekly rhythm, what I'd be doing on Mondays, Tuesdays. I literally planned it out. And that included a lot of time outdoors. My plan was to be outside, outdoors in July, yes, and August. But I did, because that was just what I wanted to do, outdoors in solitude. The weekly rhythm every day involved spiritual growth and prayer, intentional prayer. Mondays and Thursdays were outdoor days in solitude. Tuesdays were my counseling and coaching days, and included outside walking as well. I walked about 5 to 10 miles a day, folks. Literally every day, 5 to 10 miles. I didn't lose any weight. I have no idea how that happened. It's killing me. Wednesdays was practical growth. So that was when I was taking an online course on coaching teams and walking. Fridays I treated as that's a free day, whatever I want, free day. Saturday, free day. And then Sundays, we worshiped away from Trinity. And that was a unique experience as well. I say this is the funny part of how the sabbatical began for me, y'all. So I had intentionally planned out, like I said, a lot of outdoor walking. Back in the spring, I had where were we at? I can't remember where we at, but we were camping or something. Anyways, I came across this book called The Lone Star Hiking Trail. I'd never heard of it. Turns out we have this 100-mile section of hiking trail it starts basically east of Montgomery, more close, but like between Navasota and Montgomery, and it goes all the way into East Texas. And you can hike that entire trail, but it's also broken out in sections. So I had planned out that I was going to be on those Mondays and Thursdays, I was going to be hiking sections of that trail. That was my plan. And then that happened. Week 1, right? So that totally disrupted everything that I planned. And I share this because it was kind of funny. The next week after, power's back on and things seem to kind of be back a little bit, I go out and I hit one section of the trail and I get about a mile in and I'm just like, why is this trail so messed? And it didn't even dawn on me. Oh yeah, we just had a hurricane blow through and wiped out the trails, right? So that was off the list. That was a huge part of my plan and it got disrupted, but that's okay. It didn't stop me from continuing, right? To follow my sabbatical plan of being outdoors. So I ended up doing a lot of some of the trails and stuff, and a lot of the walkways up in the Woodlands area that are definitely kept up and a little bit cleaner. But literally, was walking 5 to 10 miles a day. It just kind of depended on what. And the reason why is. One of the things I discovered about myself about a year or two ago through some of my own being coached is I'm best on my feet. So if you come into my office, you'll recognize intentionally I have a standing desk, a very open office because I'm best. I work best on my feet. I think best on my feet. So that's why walking was so important because actually a lot of my spiritual connection with God is done as I'm moving. Most of it was done in silence. But there was a lot of times where I was actually listening to the Gospel of John, just as I'm walking trails. And so that was kind of my daily rhythm. That was part of my spiritual growth, spiritual renewal, was just that. This is actually a picture of, so a big part of my sabbatical experience, which I'm going to get to in a little bit, happened in August toward the end of my sabbatical. I had an opportunity I was blessed with some funds that were raised by some significant members here at Trinity Klein to fund some of the sabbatical for me because there was a lot of pieces that cost, the coaching cost, the courses that I was taking costed. But I was able to take a section of this and spend 2 weeks in Southwest Colorado. And some of you heard me talk about this. This was actually my first day in Colorado, and we were hiking just outside of Sand Dunes, the Great Sand Dunes National Park. Anyways, so the pictures that you're seeing that I have on here are basically from that 2 weeks that I spent up there. So the first 4 weeks, again, were spent focused on emotional renewal and self-reflection. And that was also just a significant piece. As I said, I was weekly counseling with Pastor Jim Oddie. Interesting side note to that is he retired. He was associate pastor up at Messiah Plano. He retired during this time. And just as soon as I finished my sabbatical and came back, this is funny, y'all. The first week, my phone rings, and it's it's Messiah Plano asking if I'd be interested in coming and assuming the role that Jim Oddie. And I said no. Thank you, but no. But I spent, anyways, every week in session with him. And what's funny about those sessions is they were also mainly outside. I spent most of my time talking to him. I had my earbuds, and was walking as I talked and reflected with him. My coaching sessions, which were also taking place weekly with Larry Reitz, he took me through the Harrison assessment. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Harrison assessment, Harrison behavioral assessment. I'm an assessment dude. I love taking assessments. I also worked on my own primal gift. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the Harrison assessment has been this one showed me so much about myself. It clarified a lot of things, but what it showed most of all was some of the things that, or it just alerted me to some areas that. Where I could work on some things and better myself. It clarified, though, my calling in ministry. It really clarified that. The other piece was the 7 Primal Questions. Mike Foster wrote a book called The 7 Primal Questions. I'm taking my staff through it, kind of working through it a little bit with them. This was something I had discovered well before the sabbatical, and I had taken this assessment, and Mike Foster, who's a counselor, a Christian pastoral counselor, says there's 7 questions that basically guide how we react to life, and that guide our thinking and a lot of our behavior. And my question that for me is, am I wanted? Am I wanted? And if I get the answer to that is no, I go into what's called a scramble, and I go into behavior that's disruptive and not good for me and not healthy. And so I want you to go back to senior pastor call, and the answer was no. Am I wanted? No, right? That was my internal answer. And so that was, again, very disruptive, very hard. That's why sabbatical was so good for me. So the primal course, there was a primal course. I did that also on Wednesdays on my own. Worked through it, created a whole primal map, just getting self-reflection, getting to know myself better. I've shared that with my staff. My staff actually has my primal map, so they know. Like Carrie, there's Carrie in the back. She's got my primal map. She's also got my Harrison assessment. Like, I am an open book. You want to know me? Here you go. I'm going to tell you. But I think it's a positive thing because it brings my staff and me together. So work through that. Practical growth as well. As I said, I took a course called Coaching Teams. I'm using that with my spiritual formation team as well, and it's turned into an unbelievable resource for me and for us as a church. I'm beginning to use it in some of the other areas of the church that are not just with my team, but school and etc. On the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So a lot of learning and a lot of growth that happened. But again, I pointed out I was blessed to be able to have these 11 days in Southwest Colorado. Again, this is a picture of me. Whether or not you can tell that's actually me, I got my I got my camo on, and I got my fishing gear, and I'm walking out. You can see the stream kind of down there. I'm heading down to start working that stream. I spent 3 days actually at a place called Trinchera Ranch. Biggest ranch in Colorado, and spent 3 days there with some guides, and it was a beautiful experience. And then I spent the other time pretty much by myself in South Fork. I had a little Airbnb in South Fork, and from there I would go to Creed. I would go to Pagosa Spring. I just went and hit all these different areas doing hiking and up at 10,000 feet elevation. Here's some more, just kind of the pictures. During that time, though, was a lot of this. This is just a real picture of a lot of just reflection and discernment and silence and solitude. There was a lot of that was happening, and it was talk about rest and renewal. I mean, this was where that happened for me. I did do some fishing, though, and I don't know if you can see in the camo, but there I am. Probably casting into this little pool there. There's some more. Just figured I'd share some of this. We're just working up these streams and fishing. Here's me actually catching a fish. Of course, I lost it too. So, but I did catch fish, so I got to share that I did actually catch some rainbows and some browns and some cutthroats. So it was all a fun and a good experience. Here's a shot. I don't know if you can actually see what that is. I stepped outside this is just right outside of the bedroom that I was sleeping in, and this herd of elk there, if you can see them. And I'm sitting out on the deck just recording this, and this is kind of what the experience was like. It was pretty phenomenal. So post sabbatical, right? And I think this is the most important piece is, when I came back, how was I? And I will say, if you go back to some of the things that I shared pre-sabbatical, talking about emotional burnout, emotional trauma, the need for that rest and renewal. And in truth, I'm not sure I believed that I would come back different or that I would feel different coming back. I didn't know that I believed that, but I did. I remember the week before coming back, I actually had a couple of different emotions that were welled up within me. One was anxiety. I was anxious about what it was going to be like to walk back onto campus. Recognize I had been unplugged from this place for 2 months. So, like, no text messages. Wait, Carrie, I think you texted me once, right? You're guilty. And it was, you did. You texted me like a week or two before I was coming back, I think. Yeah. I don't know. But I had no contact, no emails, no communication. So there was this piece within me in my head, and again, run it through the am I wanted, right? And if nobody's reaching out to me and nobody's talking to me, and I feel really totally, the brain's going, well, maybe I'm not, right? Maybe I'm not. Maybe the answer is no. But it was just the actual disconnect, right? That was necessary. But the second emotion, which was an incredibly positive one, is I was very excited to get back. And that was a unique feeling. I was very excited to get back. And the day that I came back, the anxiety was a little bit high because this is strange. But once I was back, I felt very good, very positive, very excited. If you go back to when the sabbatical began, I'm just kind of looking at some of my notes. I felt lost. I felt very lost, y'all. I was burned out. I was feeling very unwanted. I was feeling very unvalued. I was feeling very uncertain about what I was supposed to be doing. But through the rest, the renewal, through the time away, through the counseling and the coaching were the biggest pieces for me. The counseling and the coaching and the silence and solitude all just led to a big, deep change for me. A deeper connection to God, a stronger sense of his presence and his leading in my life and where he was leading me. A stronger sense of self, like who I am. I have a much greater understanding of who I am. A much greater understanding of why I'm here in the position that I'm in, right? More self-confidence in myself. And that's one of the pieces that I'm working through the Harrison assessment to build up my self-confidence. Contentment. These are all things that are very real. Also strengthened with an ability to help others discover more about themselves. And I love doing that. I love helping others in that same self-discovery. And now I have all of these resources that I've been through that I feel very, I have the ability to share that with others and take others through. So I'm doing some of that with our current staff. The other piece, though, which is why not just this session, but the sessions to come is if you come into my office now, I have a list of values, because that's the other thing that I kind of worked through was adopting my own values. And at the very top is unplug. It's the number one value is unplug. And I'm encouraging others to discover what that looks like for them as well. And it's an absolute necessity for us to find ways to unplug. And I don't know what that looks like for you, but that's, I'm happy to kind of walk through what that looks like for you. I want to share a couple of, while we've got a few minutes, some of the resources. I've already talked about emotionally healthy spirituality, and I talked about Henry Nguyen's Discernment, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. But some of the other resources that also are impacting me currently. This is one in which in the coming sessions, probably each session, I'm going to share a poem with us. This is a book of poems by Tanner Olson. Tanner Olson is, he's an LCMS kid. I call him a kid. He's not a kid. He's a guy. He's a man. He's just younger. But he's Lutheran through and through, Christian author, speaker. There are a lot of folks who know who I'm talking about when I say Tanner Olson. But he's literally got a book of poems called Walk a Little Slower, right? Perfect. Walk a little slower. And so, let me see. I thought maybe I'll share one. This one's called Remember and Rest. He says, and again, I'll breathe in deep and exhale all that is heavy as I remember your grace and mercy. I'll lay down what's aching within as I lie down inside. If my hope rests in you, so will I. Lead my wandering mind to sit with the silence and remember all you've done as I wait for you to arrive. Teach me to hold on and lean in and stay hopeful when I think of where and who I have been. Unfold these white-knuckled fingers and bring these hands to hand over what is keeping me from being still. Restore to me the beauty of childlike believing, like before I heard about disease and death, and before the war in my heart and mind started to steal my breath. Push back my shoulders and set me straight as I pause in a world of constant motion. Won't you remove what remains pressed on my chest so I can simply wait and rest? And again, I'll breathe in deep and exhale all that is heavy as I remember your grace and mercy. And again, I'll breathe in deep. And again, I'll exhale all that is heavy. And again, I'll remember your grace and mercy. I just love these poems that just the reminder of unplugging and resting. A couple of other resources. This one's called The Practice of the Presence of God. You can read this in 40 minutes. I mean, it's such a little book, but it's about it's letters and conversations with a guy called Brother Lawrence. And I won't give it away, but Practice of the Presence of God. I'll probably end up sharing some quotes from here as well. Book that I've just discovered here recently and just started getting into, but one that I know that I need more than anything right now. It's a book called Gentle and Lowly, The Heart of Christ for Sinners and Sufferers. And it really just goes deep into painting a very real picture of who Jesus is, especially to those of us who are worn out and weary.